All right, good afternoon. Is it okay if I stand up here and talk and you don't hear me in the back? Awesome. I'd much rather do that than stand behind a microphone. Let's make sure this works. All right, well, I guess my title is Senior Vice President of Square Pegs and Round Holes, which is an upgrade from fencing engineer and manure management from the farm. I grew up in Wellman, Washington County. Today I run and manage the farm with my two cousins, my two older cousins, Jeff and Jim. And that really has been a very good thing for me. It's what I wanted to do when I went home from college, or when I graduated from college, but there was no room for me. My father, my uncle, my two older cousins who are 6 and 7 years older than me, and me. And so I had to get an on-farm job. I ran into a guy in Cedar Rapids who had a great idea about farm continuation, but he really didn't understand what the nuts and the bolts were, neither did I. And so fast forward, it's been 25 years now. Probably the thing that gives me the most credibility to stand in front of you is putting together just over 4,000 estate plans and transition plans in that 25 years. And dealing with all the attorneys and the accountants and the rest of the process and holding hands to get us where we're going. I appreciate you guys sitting down and eating fast. I think I have until 1:15. And so I'll talk a lot about stuff. I'll do a lot of case samples, a lot of examples, and you guys ask whatever questions you want. Those of you who know me know I can do very few things in less than 2 hours. And so it's going to be hard for me to kind of squeeze some of this stuff in, but we'll try as much as we can. I always give a disclaimer for each talk that I give. This is my father and my oldest son, who was age 4 at the time. My dad had a couple of rules. One of them very specifically is you don't go fishing with Grandpa until you're at least 12. And I caught him red-handed taking my 4-year-old son out fishing one day, and this was the picture. The moral of the story is sometimes you have to bend the rules. Okay? And that's what this deal is about. Because, we're coming off a period of extreme high land values. We're still in an area of non-cash flow area of values. And we're going to have to bend the rules to make this thing work. And that's an issue. The second reason my dad's up here is the actual words here. Please don't take anything that I say today and implement it into your situation without talking to your own attorneys, your own accountants, your other advisors, whoever that is. It's really, really important. My dad does not like corporations. He doesn't understand them. He's never had one. But he has a buddy at the co-op that he drinks coffee with every morning that had 600 acres in his corporation when they set it up in the 70s. And when he went to retire, he realized, uh-oh, I've got all these assets in this appreciated corporation. I can't get them out without massive tax. I have no child to hand it over to and say, here's your tax problem, deal with it yourself. And therefore, corporations are the devil to him. So the moral of the story is coffee shop talk gets you in trouble. Okay? And you all do it. I do it too. And don't do it with this information. I want to make sure I'm not giving you coffee shop talk here. I can't, especially in a group of young farmers, not set the stage what's going on from a macroeconomic situation in agriculture. And I think it's really important. I talk about it almost every day, but especially in a group like this, we have to not only talk about it, we have to understand it at its core. Okay? And to do that, I think we have to ask the question, why do you farm? And in the interest of time, I'm going to tell you. It's probably because of history, right? Is there anybody in here who farms actively, but their parents or their grandparents or their in-laws did not? That makes you a first generation. Okay? We have an interesting industry, right? That is a rampant issue of what's going on. This is my grandfather. He died 2 years before I was born on 1951 on the new M. Today we still have that, we call it the old M today. Picture my dad and my Uncle Harold in the 70s. They had the luxury of what we have today, which is some freedom and independence, being able to take it to the moon or run it into the ground. They also had the luxury of being able to buy farms and pay for them in 3 to 5 years. Nobody in this room is probably going to have that luxury again. Okay, and that's an issue in agriculture. Lastly, why you farm? Great place to raise a family. I've been trying to get my wife closer and closer to the farm as we can. I've inched her as close as I can. She says we have a verbal prenuptial agreement that we won't live on the farm. She comes from Denver. Okay? But she does a pretty good job. She actually came into our business today with us. So, bottom line, the bottom is my grandfather again with 3 of my 4 sisters. So we have this thing that we love. We're not going to give it up. We're going to do it forever. Okay? But you do have to ask yourself the question, why would you ever stop? Normally we're forced out. Unfortunately, if it's finance, if it's health, and if those two don't get you, what will? Death, right? You will die. Most of us will die owning the farm because it defines us. That's an issue. Okay? It's a big issue right now. We'll talk about that in a second. What happens then? Shrinkage. Of course, there's federal state tax, maybe on inheritance tax, probate administration costs, and debts, and then farm business and succession issues that we have to deal with. All right, from a macroeconomic position, excuse me, and the guys from Iowa State can correct me if I'm wrong, but these stats come from Iowa State. 31.5 million acres in Iowa. Last year, $7,183 an acre is the average. It was down 5.9%, down 17.5% since 2013. But what that still means, I got a pointer here, you take that number times that number, and it's a big number. Okay? It has a B behind it in terms of billions. The market capitalization for the agriculture and economics is unbelievable. Okay? Makes it $226 billion with a B. That doesn't include any cash or operating assets. We have a massive asset on paper. Right? We all understand that. 2016, it went from 240 billion down to 226 just because of the average price of the land. We lost $14 billion off of our balance sheets. Didn't change a bit of productivity. Okay? And that's a problem. What age group owns the land? Here's the issue. My dad, my uncle, myself, and my two cousins. This was 1996, I believe, somewhere in that range. These are the two guys that own it, and these are the three jokers who want to own it. And for me, myself, this was the group that stood in the way. My mom and my wife. And these two groups of people are different. Not because the male and the female thing, they're just different. Off farm, on farm. They look different. Uh-oh. Oh.
I got it.
Thank you. Hit the wrong button there. They look different, they act different, they do different things with their life, they do different things with their money. It doesn't mean one group is wrong and one group is right. It means it creates you to wear a black and white striped shirt to be the referee and figure out what's fair. Okay? And that is a problem. Statistically, 65% of the land is owned by people that are age 60 years and older. Okay? And we have something we love, we're not going to let it go. What are those 60-year-olds and older going to do in the next 15 to 20 years? They're going to pass away. So we are sitting on an unprecedented transfer of wealth right now. There's about 300,000 acres in each county. 65% of that is about 200,000. Can you imagine a situation in the next 10 to 15 years where 200,000 acres in your county changes hands? I freak out when 160 acres in our neighborhood changes hands. That's an issue. That's a big issue, and it's coming down the pipe. You add to that shrinkage, which we're not going to talk about today, we'll see an average of 25% shrinkage. So the federal state tax has changed significantly. That has reduced significantly, but we still have debt. We've got administration expenses, okay? And you might have some tax. All right, so we have this perfect storm going on. This is the big picture economically. We have the age of the landowners, the oldest it's been in history. We have all-time high land values. Even though we've set back, it's still all-time high land values. Cash flow to acquire land is outside long-term profitability. You have to subsidize, and you have to have economies of scale. And that means you have to be able to compete, okay? And that's a problem for young farmers, period. Farm is a legacy asset. French philosopher René Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." The farmer says, "I farm, therefore I am." And what defines us, okay? And you will not give that up. Right? You'll fight to give it up, even though you know you should, and that's required to transition. Control, very difficult to surrender, required to transfer. Advice from specialists, limited by location, experience, and incentive. What's their incentive in helping you transition this farm? Low interest rates, they will change in the future. We've been talking about that a lot. Okay? It's coming, it will come. Longevity of the landowner. We have a sandwich generation situation right now because people are living longer. If you live till your 60s, that means that your kids are in their 30s and 40s, and if death is the triggering event that gives you opportunity, that opportunity is going to happen when you're in your 30s and your 40s. Well, if your parents are going to live to your 90s, your opportunity isn't going to come if death is the triggering event till you're 65 or 70. What happens? You just got sandwiched out, right? Now we got to look over to the next generation, the grandkids. So we have a whole group of people who are working, maybe without a plan, with this trust that someday this will all be mine, and they're in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s and their 60s, and mom and dad still aren't dying yet, and they still own it. We have a problem. Family dynamics, what's fair and what's equal? How about performance-based pay versus inheritance-based pay? I could talk for 2 hours about that one alone. But a group like this is wanting to talk about performance-based pay. What I do, right? Get paid for what I do. I don't want to get into an argument here, but if I ask the question, how many of you guys, especially young farmers, believe that you're underpaid for what you do for your folks or whoever you're working for? Guaranteed, you'll all raise your hand. Okay? And yet your parents believe that they're giving you some opportunity and they're giving you this business, this transition, and there's a gap there. I had a unique situation about 4 or 5 months ago. I had 2 appointments back to back. One of them came in and he said, you know what, I believe I need to pay my children that are working for me what they would get in the open market, okay, if they were outside. Paid his son $100,000 a year to farm, salary. That son had other land that he had bought. Well, of course he did, because he had disposable cash flow. Okay, a unique concept. The very next appointment, the father admitted to me, I haven't paid my son ever, not once. Gave him a house to live in, paid his insurance, paid his utilities, paid his meat, paid his gas, paid all that stuff for him. Now I'd like to give him 30% of my estate. Okay? 2 people trying to compensate efforts in 2 very different ways. Not saying one is right, not saying one is wrong, but it was interesting to me, those 2 ends of the spectrum that came at me within 2 hours in the same day. Performance-based pay versus inheritance-based pay. Deferral mentality. We all have it, right? The problem with deferral mentality, whether it's in grain marketing or anything you do, in this case estate and business transition planning, is it makes you susceptible. It makes you susceptible to greed, hope, and fear. Whether it is grandma still owns the farm and she's 85 years old and looking at going into the nursing home, she might not make great decisions at that point in time. Okay? Or now you have cancer and we've got to do this and everything's freaking out. You get rid of all that stuff with a plan and you follow the plan. So we have this unbelievable transfer of wealth going on with all of these things happening right now. There's no better time to be a young farmer. You just got to figure it out. Okay? George W. Bush was kind of made fun of for making up words. Okay? This morning I made up a word for this. I saw that opportunity when I came in there. Okay? You need to Oppor-Communicate. Oppor-Communicate. Okay? What does that mean? You've got to communicate with that generation about the opportunities that you might have. Okay? And that is key. That's what you have to do, period. I had a gentleman about, it was a while ago, a year ago. I'd worked with him for a while. He told me, he said, whichever one of my children, and he had 3 of them, okay, called him once a week. If one of them would call him once a week, I was going to inherit everything. That's an extreme. But that's the way he felt. Right? He owned 2,500 acres. He was serious. And he has now changed his estate plan because that time frame that he wanted to run that test has run. So the older generation is asking for it. Okay? You talk about a farm on program, or you talk about any of these great, fabulous programs that you've got to look into. They all center around communication. And I apologize to the old guys in the room, but the old guys want to see that. They want to see you come with a plan. They want to see you work for it. They don't want to pay any tax. So if you can come to them with some of these programs and some of these ideas and talk in their language, Oppor-Communicate, it'll be there for you. But you got to do that. Okay? There are lots of people that need matching up. It's hard though, because we're an independent group of people, right? We like to do things our own way. And all of a sudden here comes Mr. Young Guy, or son, or daughter, or niece, or nephew, or whatever. And all of a sudden, it's not my way anymore. It's got to be somebody else's way. Comes back to that control issue. All right, this is what we're after. Unfortunately, this is where we're headed. Okay? And that does not bode well for small towns. That doesn't bode well for school systems. That doesn't bode well for small town school systems and banks and co-ops. You name it, we're headed the wrong way in this situation in small town family farm agriculture. I don't want to, in the interest of time, go through much of this, other than I believe you need to understand in succession the who, the what, the where and the when, the why, and the how. Okay? Things like the where and the when. You know, consciously decide this thing. Is it going to be at death, or is it going to be while living? Okay? And I'll start using my examples now. You've got a sheet in front of you that is horizontal. On the front and the back has two different contract payment examples. Had an 84, 85-year-old, something like that. He had 9 kids. 2 of them are farming, 2 sons. He said, Steve, for the last 5 years, his attorney did his taxes. For the last 5 years, when I go in to do my taxes, I've asked my attorney, I want to be able to transition this farm. I want to sell it to my sons. Okay? And his attorney would constantly tell him, you can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do it. What he was mainly talking about was capital gains. Because we were talking about a 400-acre farm. His basis was maybe $1,000 an acre. Some of it was a lot less. And when you do the math, 400 acres at $1,000 an acre basis, that's $400,000. And now that land might be worth, the only thing good about 10,000 an acre is it's simple math. Okay? 400 acres, 10,000 an acre, $4 million. So from 450,000 or 400,000 of basis up to $4 million of sale price, that's $3.6 million a gain. If you wrote a check for that and the old man received that money all in 1 year, he'd have to pay capital gains tax on it, right? 23.8 federal is the maximum right now. There would be no state of Iowa, but he wasn't told that. And some people would say, well, 23.8, that's the cheapest tax that you pay. Are you kidding me, on $3.4 million? Okay, but obviously, old man doesn't want to hear that, right? So it's shutting down. 5 years in a row, shutting down, shutting down. So there are 2 concepts that you need to understand that make this concept work. The first one is gifting. There's 2 levels of gifting that you need to understand. Everybody has heard of the first one. $14,000 per year. It used to be $10,000, but with inflation it's indexed up. $14,000 per year to anybody you want. Okay? Doesn't have to be related. You can give $14,000 to me if you want to. So that's the first level of gifting. Well, clearly, if this gentleman was going to sell the farm at a lower price, he was going to blow right through that, right? That's only 1 acre or 2 acres worth. The second level of gifting is your death exclusion, which we're not here to talk about today, but that's $5,490,000 per person at the federal level. You can literally give away $5.49 million, 0 tax. Now we have something to talk about, right? Because that means that this gentleman could price the land at whatever price he wanted to make it work. He wound up pricing it at $3,000 an acre, used some of his gift tax exclusion, set the contract at $3,000 an acre. By the time the smoke cleared, when we figured the applicable federal rate of interest that he can charge, which is the lowest rate of interest, he stretched the payment terms out to 20 years, and he had a contract that was going to be approximately $280 an acre, which was what he was getting in rent. Okay? Now, the second concept, when you stretch a capital gain over a contract, you stretch that over the years as you receive those principal payments. At $76,000 of taxable income, which is where he was, because this contract was about a $76,000 payment, but then he's also got his Social Security and things on top of that, but then he's got his exemptions and his deductions, which brings his taxable income back down to $76,000. Do you know what the federal capital gains rate is for that level of income? We said 23.8 if it was all at 1 year. 0. Okay? The capital gains rate at the federal level is 0% if your total taxable income is $76,000 or less for a married couple. Do you know what the state of Iowa capital gains rate? It's a trick question. There isn't capital gains in Iowa. Ordinary income tax rate is on farmland that qualifies for family farm transition and that's been in the family for 10 years. 0. So he was in a situation where he could set the price because of gifting. He could set the terms of the contract. He could accomplish his goals, which was to transition his farm to his 2 boys at a price that was affordable. He had the exact same amount of income that he had before, but instead of it being rent, taxed at ordinary income, now it's capital gains, taxed at 0% state, 0% federal because of the contract and the levels that it was in. 84-year-old man cries. Okay? He accomplished his goal. So now, if those were the two boys that were coming at him, speaking his language, communicating with him, okay, we got something. And that's what you got to do. You got to figure out what that generation ahead of you that owns it wants, and what's going to make them tick. And then figure out your value and how you can bring value add to that. And then bring the tools available into that equation and create a plan. Okay? So I'll get to this piece of paper. This is not the example that I just gave you, but you can study this. There's two different examples. Flip it over on the back side, whichever side you're looking at, it doesn't matter. On one side, we did $7,500 an acre on a 35-year contract at the current AFR interest rate of 2.58%. This is a contract. Okay? I asked Hill to lend me money at 2.58%, and they will not do it. Okay? About every 2 years, I call Sarah and ask her for money, and she's always very good and gives it to me, but it's not at 2.58%. So the payment is in yellow, top left-hand corner. $1.2 million, $52,476 is the payment. 35 years. The tax gain is in the top right-hand corner in yellow, $1,040,000, because I had $160,000 in basis. There's 160 acres in this example in the top right-hand quadrant. And then the three columns that are highlighted, contract interest, contract principal, and then on the far right, estimated capital gains. So on a $52,000 contract, you could buy 160 acres at $7,500 an acre, and right underneath that $52,000 payment, it would be $327 an acre, cash flow. And now you got to go 35 years. First thing young farmer's going to say is what? I don't want to do that. I want to wait until land values go down. I get that a lot. Really? When land values go down, what's going to happen to interest rates? Right? And you might have missed your opportunity. Because now you might be dealing with 3 siblings in an estate, and you got all kinds of problems. Flip it over, the other side. $5,000 an acre on a 20-year contract. Same payment. Okay, so the moral of the story is we can move the price and the years around to make the square peg fit into the round hole. All right, I better be rocking here. I plan on that segment taking about 5 minutes. Move right past it. You're looking for opportunity. I thought this was good. I wasn't a basketball player, but I was out for basketball. John Wooden, created this pyramid of success. Okay, and the interesting thing is not about this; it's about this. Okay, this is our pyramid of success that we live in every day, right? Where are we at in that pyramid? My dad's the one up on the top. Right? I'm the one down at the bottom. And we got to figure out what the ones up at the top need and put it into their system, so by the time it gets down to us, it's in a form that's a little more palatable than that. Okay? So normally we go through these building blocks. Ownership's important, basis step-up's important, shrinkage and portability is extremely important, and we figured all that out. I'm blowing right past that to the last one, which is succession strategies, just in the interest of time. All right. So we hit a crossroads in nearly every plan that we're doing in farm succession planning with regard to this is a land deal kind of. Because I think one of the other guys said it earlier, the machinery finds its way and the operating assets usually works its way out over time. Whether it's because the farmer, the original generation 1 owner wants to slow down, doesn't want to own it anymore, or doesn't want to buy it anymore, one of those two. Slowly we see equipment transition to the next generation naturally, but we hold on to the land. So the land creates a fork in the road planning opportunity, and I think you've got to sit down and decide one of two types. Where all the farm assets go to the farming heir, and we got to have something else go to the non-farming heirs, cash. Whether that's a bank loan, a contract, or some other plan that you've come up with, or insurance, we see that often. The second one would be farm assets to multiple heirs, okay, which we better have lease and purchase options. Okay? Not a big fan of putting something in an estate plan to where my farming child's going to have an option to rent the ground for 5 years. Or my farming child's going to have an option to buy it for 5 years. It's like you give up candy for Lent. What do you do on Easter Sunday morning? Eat every piece of candy possible, right? That's what happens when you put, and it doesn't have to be 5 years, that's just the one that's in my head right now. You put a number of years on something, in the year after that number of years, you're having an auction. just the way it is. By the way, do we go to farm auctions when the owner's alive? How many farm auctions you've been to recently where the owner was alive? Right? You thought through that? Why is that? Why is it that auctions are estate auctions?
Cash.
Cash, yeah. There's two main reasons, that's kind of one of them. The first one is a basis step up. Probably the thing that makes me the least credible to stand in front of you today is I write a column in the Iowa Farmer today. Although that gives me by far the most notoriety, but I wrote a column about capital gains and basis step up, and I'm getting ready to put together the guts to write a controversial piece about why basis step up is bad for the economy in Iowa. Now, that won't be very well received by accountants, by attorneys, and rightfully so, because really, I write a lot of stuff for shock effect, to get you to think. Of course I think basis step up is good. Basis step up means that at death, you get a brand new basis based on the value of the property at death. Fabulous for machinery, grain, tile, fertility, anything that's redepreciable. Okay? Buy a tractor, 179 it, die. Get a basis step up, next generation gets to deduct the same tractor twice. Okay? And if you're lucky, mom dies after she's depreciated the second time, and you get depreciated a third time. Right? We just hope mom doesn't meet somebody in between and she gives it to him. I always tell my wife, I don't mind if you get remarried, just don't bring the guy to my funeral and I'll be all right. So, basis step up, of course, is great. It's fabulous for depreciating assets. But basis step up on land, I could build an argument, harms us in our economy, the macroeconomic economy in Iowa. Because it incentivizes people to sell it. There's no tax, right? What's the worst thing about winning the lottery besides it will ruin you and you will spend all your money and all that? Tax, right? You win $5 million in the lottery, how much are you going to get? Half of that, right? You inherit $5 million, how much are you going to get? $5 million. It's tax-free. It's the best thing ever. And you have to start thinking in terms of this, because your kids will. Hopefully they don't until you quit breathing, but your kids will think of this way. This is the foundation of arguments, okay? Which is the second reason you see land auctions at death. The first one's basis step up, because they can, and it's tax-free. Imagine if there was no basis step up on the land, and all of your kids inherited land that had your basis at $500 an acre, or $1,000 an acre. 15 years after your death, you think they'll still have it? Yep. Imagine if your kids inherited land that had a basis step up that they could just sell and pay zero tax. 15 years after your death, you think they'll have it? And if they do turn it into cash, you think they'll have that cash? Stuff to think about. Okay? So, this basis step up is the first one, and the second one is the fighting and the arguing part. There's a nasty law in the state of Iowa. It's a partition law. Okay? It says in real estate, if there's multiple owners and you don't agree, okay, the tiebreaker goes to the one who wants to sell it. It basically says the court will divide the ground for you. The problem is that the ground doesn't divide, so the court will divide the cash, which is where the auction comes from. Are you saying hi, or are you saying I got 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
Awesome. Tara was so excited, she's bidding at an auction that day. So, you have to understand that without a plan, the default is to sell it. And the incentive is to sell it because of basis step up. Okay? So you have to decide which one of these. But if you go to this one, you better have solid lease and purchase options that are long-term. Long-term lockdown. Problems here, you divide the land base. Can you afford to divide your land base? Okay? I'm going to give you a little exercise, and what you need to remember is n minus 1 over n, where n equals the number of kids you have. Run through that formula, because that's an important one. Okay? And let's say n for you is 4. n minus 1 is 3. 3 over 4 is 3/4. Can you write a check today for 3/4 of your net worth? Right? Well, sure, my son should inherit 25%, is 1/4 his down payment. Okay, 8,000 an acre ground is now 6,000 an acre ground. You had the luxury of accumulating that over maybe 50 years. And you're going to ask your son or daughter to buy it in one, all at one time. Nope, not going to happen. Okay? N minus 1 over N. What will your competition do? I live in a pretty competitive county, right? What will the other neighbors be doing? And will that be different from you? And will that put them in a different position than you when it comes time to compete? Establish an entity with rules. Now, I'm going to skip over a lot of this stuff, but there are some traditional strategies, but cash flow is always king. Okay? I talked about the capital gains treatment, ordinary income, low interest rates, corporations. That's a whole another discussion that we'll have to get into. Yeah, here it is. You guys got this in front of you, right? This will be probably the best 3 minutes that I can spend anyway. I'm going to zip through it. Grab your pen and your pen so you got one. Will somebody grab a calculator? Is there an accountant in here, or just somebody that's got a phone that's got a calculator? 400 acre zone in line 1, right? 400. Average price per acre, $7,000 an acre. Land values, $2.8 million, so $2,800,000. Sweat equity, family discount. Let's give a 20% discount. So basically in your estate plan, you're saying, my child's worked for 20 years, I'm going to give them 1% equity for every year that they've worked. We're just going to take 20% off the top because I say so. So that discount would be, don't write 20%, right? $560,000. Now you quantify it. Rather than paying your child $100,000 a year salary and letting them have the money or their equity now, you're going to quantify it at your death with arguments, and then it'll be put in numbers. And to say $560,000, my farming brother got $560,000, right? And it takes the emphasis off of what you were trying to accomplish and puts it on money, okay? And it starts the wheel turning. Land debt, let's have $100,000 in that one. I'm on line 5. Family land value, subtract them out. 2.8 minus 560 minus 100, and now's where I need the calculator. 660, 2,140,000 in line 6. Total heirs, I'll stay with 4 children. Farm value per heir, 2.140 divided by 4 is 535,000, let's say. Unless somebody wants to correct me quick, is anybody doing it? 535? Non-farm heirs, 3 non-farm heirs. So 535,000 times 3 is the number we got to come up with. That's my bogey. What is it? 1,605,000. Okay? Cash needed to pay off land debt. Add back in 100,000 because we got to pay off hills. Total cash need, 1,705,000 on line 12. Annual payment acquire the land required. 10% of that, which would be $170,500. I'll take a pause real quick. Every land auction I go to, anytime anybody tells me they bought some ground, my bogey is 10%. Take that number times 10%, and that's what they need to cash flow it, right? 10% is the equivalent of a 5.5% interest loan over 15 years, okay? And that's in the range of doable right now. Or you can stretch it out if interest rates go up. A 20-year loan at 7.75% will yield the same 10% principal and interest payment. So in my mind, 10%. Somebody buys ground for $5,000. Who's happy in here about that? I am, right? Anybody in here buy good ground for $5,000 right now? Call up Sarah. Sarah, give money. Okay. How about $500 an acre cash flow to pay that, make that payment? Anybody willing to sign up for that one? No. Sarah's not. It's the same thing, right? $5,000 an acre purchase price is the same as a $500 an acre cash flow payment. That's how far upside down we are in agriculture. When the sale price sounds intriguing, but the cash flow won't work. Okay? Tillable acres. Let's go back to 400 tillable acres and make one more division for me, calculator. 170,500 divided by 400. $426 an acre. So you mean to tell me that I can have 3 siblings, 7,000 an acre ground, take a 20% discount off the top, inherit a fourth, and I'm still at $426 an acre. Right? Okay, y'all, go out there and go find somebody and buy their ground. Right? It'll just kick you in the gut. That's the problem. N minus 1 over N. You write that down on the back. That's what you got to figure out. We have to think outside the box, or this deal's not going to work. Special use, real quick, I'll kind of close with this, and if I can get farther, give me the hook, Tara. Special use is traditionally a value set up under Section 2032A of our Internal Revenue Code that says if your estate goes above the federal estate tax exemption and the land is going to stay a family farm, we will allow you, meaning the government will allow you to use a different valuation method to put it on your estate tax return than the appraisal. Let's say the ground appraises at $10,000 an acre. The formula is 5-year average cash rent. Let's just say that averages out to $250 an acre after property tax. The applicable factor, which for our agribank area in Omaha is 0.471, 250 divided by 0.471 is $5,307 an acre. The same ground appraised at $10,000 an acre, Uncle Sam under 2032A will let us value it at $5,300 an acre. The discount can't exceed $1.1 million. I've had 2 bachelors pass away in the last 6 months. Both of them were in the $7 to $8 million range, which immediately is red flag, holy crap, because they got 2 taxes going on. The first one is federal estate tax. They're above the 5.49 million, 40% if you're above that. So they had 2 point something, both of them at 40% federal. The next one is Iowa inheritance tax. If you don't have children or grandchildren or parents or a spouse to leave your assets to, you're going to leave them to nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters. There's a 10 to a 15% Iowa inheritance tax on top of that. Okay? The one that sticks with me the most because they just wrote the checks. They paid $850,000 to the federal government and $850,000 to the state of Iowa. Okay? And so that, and they know it, by the way. I don't know if there's any single bachelor, in here or not, but they know it. They know they have a problem. And they're looking for somebody with that Oppor-Communicate. I can't even say the word, but you know what I mean, right? They're looking for somebody. LLCs or FLPs are fabulous ways to transition, and the operating agreement is the #1 issue. And I've been fortunate or unfortunate, it depends how you look at it, to deal with a lot of people on the legal side of this deal that are drafting these documents, and they are not all the same, not anywhere close. And so you see specialists out there and you see non-specialists out there. Unfortunately, I would say 95% of them are non-specialists. So you got to be careful about that and maybe even get a second opinion, which is what you do if you have a medical issue, right? I already went through this week's case samples, but I'll hit a couple of them if I have time and you just tell me when to quit. Adoption's interesting. Had a guy in my office early this week or late last week, I don't remember. Gentleman who he farmed for years, they crop shared for 30 years. He adopted him because the Iowa inheritance tax is 15% tax if you go to non-related. But a child, even if it's adopted, he's 52 years old, he adopted him. Iowa inheritance tax. Okay? Now, I'm not telling you to go out and ask this guy to adopt. But I'm giving you examples, although extreme examples, of how the system works. And there are some people who figure it out and play the game. Okay? It was interesting. A friend of mine, an attorney that we use a lot, he called me and he's laying out this situation. And I said, yeah, that's this family. And he's like, oh yeah, I didn't know you guys could work together, but they have $3.5 million of deferred grain inside their corporation. And it's just deferring and deferring and deferring and deferring. And they pull out what they need to pay all their year expenses from that, and then the next year's crop is usually more, and so it just keeps deferring and getting bigger, and now they have a big problem. And so it was interesting, we had 2 of those problems, the same guy. That's the guy that got adopted by somebody else. Private annuity contract, okay? Here is another interesting one. Had an aunt who lived in Phoenix, and she had an issue with Arizona tax. She had an issue with Iowa tax because she didn't have any children. And all she wanted, she said, Steve, I want to transition this farm, and all I want is $300 an acre. So we did a private annuity contract. It's a little different than a regular sales contract. It just guarantees as long as she lives, the person she's selling to is paying her that X amount of dollars a year. Okay, so I apologize. I dumped a lot of stuff on you in a short period of time. I think that was my intent, just to keep things going and wake you up after lunch a little bit. So I appreciate Hills Bank and everybody having me here. So thank you, and I wish you all the best of luck in your pursuits.